You didn't lose yourself in one moment. You lost yourself in quiet, invisible choices that no one else could see. It happened when you ignored that small feeling inside you that said something isn't right. It happened when you stayed silent instead of speaking your truth. It happened when you kept choosing their presence over your own peace. And slowly, without realizing it, you began to disappear from your own life. At first, it felt like love. It felt like patience. It felt like you were doing the right thing by holding on, by understanding more, by giving more. You told yourself, this is what real connection looks like, staying even when it's hard. But deep inside, something never felt fully calm. Something kept whispering that you were losing more than you were receiving. And the hardest part is, you didn't even notice when it started happening. You were so focused on keeping them that you didn't see yourself slipping away. You kept showing up for them while slowly abandoning yourself. You kept hoping things would change, while quietly changing who you are just to make it work. Until one day, you look at your life and something feels off. You're still there, still trying, still holding on, but you don't feel like you anymore. And that's the moment most people ignore. But if you truly face it, it becomes the moment that changes everything. You don't break overnight. You quietly disappear from your own life. Losing yourself is not loud or dramatic. It does not come with a clear warning or a sudden collapse that forces you to stop and notice. It happens in silence, in very small moments that feel unimportant at the time. It begins when you ignore that slight discomfort inside you just to keep the peace. It continues when you choose not to say what you truly feel because you don't want to upset them. You start adjusting yourself little by little, thinking it is normal, thinking it is part of love, thinking you are just being patient and understanding. At first, these changes feel harmless. You tell yourself you are growing, you are learning to be calm, you are becoming more mature. But slowly, these small adjustments begin to take something from you. You start changing your reactions, your words, even your natural feelings. You laugh when something actually hurts you. You stay quiet when you want to speak. You agree with things that don't sit right with your heart. And each time you do this, a small part of your true self becomes weaker. You stop expressing your real thoughts because it feels easier to stay silent than to explain yourself again and again. You stop doing things that once made you happy because your focus is now on keeping them comfortable. You begin to plan your words carefully, thinking about how they will react instead of what you truly want to say. You become more careful, more controlled, more restricted, and slowly, you forget what it felt like to just be yourself without thinking so much. The most painful part is that you don't even realize it is happening. From the outside, everything may look normal. You are still there, still smiling, still talking. But inside, something feels different. There is a quiet emptiness, a feeling that you are not fully present in your own life. You are no longer choosing what feels right for you. You are choosing what keeps the connection going. And this is how you begin to disappear. Not in one big moment, but in hundreds of small ones. You don't leave your life completely. You just slowly step back from it. You give your energy, your attention, your emotions to someone else until there is very little left for you. You begin to exist in a way that feels safe for them, but unfamiliar to you. You start living carefully instead of freely. Without even noticing, you are no longer living your life fully. You are no longer connected to your own needs, your own truth, your own happiness. You are simply trying to hold on to someone, trying to keep things from falling apart. And in doing that, you pay a price that is much bigger than you realize. You slowly give away your own identity. What you call love is often attachment fueled by fear. What you feel can be very intense, very real, and very hard to let go of. But not everything that feels strong is truly love. Many times, what you call love is actually attachment, and that attachment is quietly built on fear. Fear of being alone, fear of losing someone who has become familiar, fear that you may not find another connection like this again. These fears do not shout loudly. They sit quietly in your mind and slowly shape your choices without you even realizing it. At first, it feels like deep care. You think about them constantly. You want to be close to them. You feel restless when they pull away and relieved when they come back. You tell yourself this is love because your emotions are so strong. But if you look deeper, you will notice something else hiding underneath. A constant sense of unease. A feeling that you might lose them at any moment. A need to hold on tighter, to do more, to give more, just to keep them in your life. This is where attachment begins to take control. You start depending on them for your emotional stability. Your mood begins to rise and fall based on how they treat you, how they respond to you, how present they are in your life. When they are close, you feel calm. When they are distant, you feel anxious. And slowly, your inner peace is no longer yours. It is tied to them. You begin to accept things you once said you never would. You tolerate behavior that hurts you. You lower your standards without even noticing it. Not because you don't know your worth, but because the fear of losing them feels stronger than the desire to protect yourself. You tell yourself to be patient, to give it more time, to understand them better. But deep down, you are not doing this from a place of peace. You are doing it from a place of fear. Real love does not make you feel like you are constantly trying to hold everything together. It does not make you feel like you have to earn your place in someone's life. It does not leave you questioning your value or doubting yourself again and again. Real love feels stable, even when it is not perfect. It allows you to breathe, to be yourself, to feel safe in your own emotions. Attachment, on the other hand, keeps you in a state of tension. It keeps you overthinking, overgiving, and overreacting. It makes you believe that you cannot be okay without that person. And this belief is what keeps you stuck, even when you know something is not right. The hardest part is that attachment can feel very similar to love, especially when you are emotionally invested. But once you begin to notice the fear behind your actions, the anxiety behind your thoughts, and the way you keep abandoning your own needs just to hold on, you start to see the difference clearly. And when you finally see it, you realize something powerful. It was never just love that kept you there. It was the fear of losing something that you believed you needed. Even when it was slowly taking you away from yourself. The truth was always there. You just chose not to listen. Deep inside, you always knew. Not in a loud, clear sentence, but in a quiet feeling that stayed with you no matter how much you tried to ignore it. It showed up in small moments, in the way your chest felt heavy after certain conversations, in the silence that didn't feel peaceful, in the way your mind kept returning to the same doubts again and again. That was your truth trying to reach you. It was never far away. It was always present, patiently waiting for you to notice. But instead of listening, you began to explain it away. You told yourself you were just overthinking. You convinced yourself that every relationship has problems. You said maybe you just needed to be more patient, more understanding, more calm. And slowly, you started trusting your explanations more than your own feelings. You chose comfort over honesty, even when that comfort was slowly hurting you. Your body was giving you signals the whole time, that uneasy feeling when something didn't feel right, that tightness when your needs were ignored, that quiet disappointment when your expectations were not met again. These were not random emotions. They were clear messages, but because you didn't want to face what they meant, you pushed them aside. You silenced them, hoping they would disappear. The more you ignored these signals, the more distant you became from yourself. Your inner voice, which was once clear and strong, started to fade into the background. You stopped trusting your own judgment. You began to question your own feelings. You started asking yourself, maybe I'm the problem. Maybe I'm asking for too much. And this is where the real disconnection begins. Not from them, but from your own truth. There is a reason your mind keeps returning to the same thoughts. There is a reason your heart feels unsettled even when everything looks fine on the outside. Truth does not force itself on you. It waits for you to be ready. And when you are not ready, it becomes a quiet voice that keeps repeating itself in different ways through your emotions, your thoughts, and your experiences. You didn't miss the signs. You felt them clearly. You just chose not to accept them because accepting them would mean facing a reality you were not ready to face. It would mean letting go of hope, letting go of the story you built in your mind, letting go of the version of things you wanted to believe in. But the truth never left you. It stayed with you through every moment, every doubt, every feeling you tried to push away. And no matter how much you tried to ignore it, it kept finding ways to come back. Because it is a part of you. It is your awareness, your inner clarity, your connection to what is real. The moment you stop running from it, the moment you allow yourself to sit with it honestly, everything begins to make sense. The confusion starts to fade, the overthinking begins to quiet down, and you realize that the answers you were searching for were never outside of you. They were always within you, waiting for you to finally listen. You're not loving them. You're holding on to who you wish they'd become. It feels like love because your heart is deeply involved, but if you look honestly, you are not holding on to who they truly are right now. You are holding on to the version of them you have created in your mind. You remember the moments when they were kind, when they showed effort, when they made you feel seen, and you build a story around those moments. You begin to believe that this is who they really are, and everything else is just temporary. So you stay, waiting for that version to come back again, and stay forever. You focus on their potential instead of their reality. You tell yourself they just need time, they just need to grow, they just need to understand you better. You give chances again and again, not because things have truly changed, but because you believe they will change. And this belief becomes your reason to stay, even when your present experience is telling you something completely different. This is where the illusion becomes strong. You are not responding to what is actually happening. You are responding to what you hope will happen. You are loving a future version of them that has not yet existed in a consistent way. And while you are holding on to that future, you keep ignoring the present moment, where your needs are not being met, where your feelings are not being fully respected, where your peace is slowly being disturbed. You begin to justify things that hurt you. You say, they didn't mean it, or they will do better next time, or I know they care deep down. And maybe they do care in their own way. But care alone is not enough if it does not show up in actions that support you, respect you, and make you feel secure. Love is not something that only exists in words or rare moments. It is something that is felt consistently in how someone treats you over time. The longer you stay in this pattern, the more you disconnect from reality. You start living inside your expectations instead of your actual experience. You become emotionally invested in something that has not yet become real, and this keeps you stuck in a cycle of waiting. Waiting for change, waiting for effort, waiting for clarity. And while you are waiting, your life keeps moving forward, but you remain in the same place. The truth is, people show you who they are through their repeated actions, not through their promises or their potential. And when you ignore those actions, you are not protecting love. You are protecting an idea that feels beautiful, but does not exist in the way you need it to. Real love sees clearly. It does not close its eyes to reality. It does not ignore patterns that cause pain. It does not stay attached to a future that keeps getting delayed. Real love accepts what is in front of it and makes decisions based on truth, not hope alone. The moment you begin to see them as they are, without adding your expectations on top of them, something inside you starts to shift. You stop holding on to what could be, and you start facing what is. And in that moment, you realize something very powerful. You were not loving them in the way you thought. You were holding on to a version that only existed in your imagination, and it was that version that kept you from letting go. You didn't lose your voice. You slowly trained yourself to stay silent. There was a time when speaking felt natural to you. You shared what you liked, what you didn't like, what made you happy, and what hurt you. Your voice was simple, honest, and clear. You didn't think too much before expressing yourself because you trusted that your feelings mattered. But over time, something began to change. Not suddenly, but slowly, through repeated experiences that made you feel unheard, misunderstood, or dismissed. It started in small moments. You said something important, and it was ignored. You tried to explain how you felt, and it turned into an argument. You opened up, and instead of being understood, you were made to feel like you were asking for too much. These moments may have seemed small on their own, but together, they began to shape your behavior. You started to notice that speaking up often brought discomfort, tension, or distance. And without even realizing it, you began to adjust. You told yourself it was better to stay quiet than to create problems. You convinced yourself that maybe silence is a sign of maturity, that maybe understanding means not always expressing everything. So you began to hold things in. At first, it felt like a choice. You thought you were controlling your reactions, keeping peace, being calm. But slowly, this choice became a habit. You stopped sharing your true thoughts because it felt safer that way. You stopped asking for what you needed because you believed it would not change anything. You started filtering your words, thinking carefully before speaking, often deciding not to speak at all. And over time, you became so used to this silence that it started to feel normal. But this silence came with a cost. The more you stayed quiet, the more disconnected you became from yourself. Your feelings did not disappear. They just stayed inside you, unexpressed and unresolved. This created a quiet pressure within you, a weight that kept growing. You may have looked calm on the outside, but inside, there was a lot you were carrying alone. You began to feel invisible in your own life, not because no one could see you, but because you were no longer showing your true self. You were present, but not fully seen. You were involved, but not fully heard. And the hardest part is, you started to believe that this is just how things are, that your voice does not matter as much as keeping things stable. But the truth is, you did not lose your voice. It is still there. It has always been there. You simply trained yourself to stay silent in situations where speaking felt unsafe or useless. You adapted to survive emotionally, but in doing so, you moved further away from your authentic self. Your voice is not gone. It is just waiting. Waiting for you to feel safe enough to use it again. Waiting for you to remember that your thoughts, your feelings, and your needs are valid. The moment you begin to trust your voice again, even in small ways, you start reconnecting with who you truly are. And that is where your strength slowly begins to return. You became a version of yourself just to be accepted and forgot who you were. It didn't happen in one big decision. You didn't wake up one day and choose to become someone else. It happened slowly, through small changes you made to feel accepted, to feel loved, to feel like you belong. At first, it seemed harmless. You adjusted your tone, your words, your reactions. You started paying attention to what they liked and what they didn't, and you shaped yourself around that. You told yourself, this is what people do in relationships. They adapt, they compromise, they adjust. But there is a quiet line between healthy adjustment and losing yourself. And without noticing, you crossed that line. You stopped being natural. You started becoming careful. Every word you spoke, every reaction you showed, began to pass through a filter in your mind. You asked yourself, will this upset them? Will this push them away? Will this make things difficult? And slowly, your focus shifted from being yourself to being someone who is easier to keep. You began to change your behavior in ways that didn't feel true to you. You laughed at things that didn't feel right. You agreed with things you didn't believe in. You stayed calm when you actually felt hurt. You held back your real personality because you feared it might be too much, too different, or not accepted. And over time, these small changes created a new version of you, one that felt safe for the relationship, but unfamiliar to your own heart. The most difficult part is that this version of you starts to feel normal. You become so used to adjusting that you forget what it felt like to be free, to speak without overthinking, to act without fear of judgment. You forget your natural reactions, your true preferences, your original energy. You start living in a way that feels controlled, limited, and constantly aware of someone else's expectations. Deep inside, there is a quiet feeling that something is missing. You may not be able to explain it clearly, but you feel it. A sense that you are not fully yourself anymore. A sense that you are playing a role instead of living your truth. And this feeling does not go away, no matter how much you try to ignore it, because it is a part of you reminding you that you have moved too far away from who you really are. You didn't become this version of yourself because you are weak. You became it because you wanted to be accepted, because you wanted to keep the connection, because you believed that changing yourself was the way to make things work. But real acceptance does not come from changing who you are. It comes from being who you are and still being valued. The longer you stay in this version of yourself, the more disconnected you feel, not just from others, but from your own identity. You begin to question yourself, doubt your worth, and lose confidence in your natural way of being. And this is where the real loss happens. Not in the relationship, but within you. But even now, the real you is not gone. It has not disappeared. It is still there, beneath all the adjustments, beneath all the silence, beneath all the roles you have learned to play. It is waiting for you to stop trying to fit into something that does not feel right and to return to yourself. And the moment you begin to let go of the version you created just to be accepted is the moment you begin to remember who you truly are. The moment you stop choosing them, you finally come back to yourself. There comes a moment when something inside you becomes clear in a way it never has before. It is not loud, it is not emotional, and it is not dramatic. It is calm, steady, and certain. After all the confusion, all the overthinking, all the waiting, you finally begin to see things as they truly are. Not how you hoped they would be, not how you imagined they could be, but how they have been all along. And in that quiet clarity, something shifts within you. You begin to understand that continuing to choose them is no longer an act of love. It is an act of losing yourself. You realize that no matter how much you try, no matter how much you adjust, no matter how much you give, you cannot create balance on your own. And for the first time, instead of trying harder, you stop. You stop chasing. You stop explaining. You stop trying to fix what has never truly changed. This is not about anger or blame. It is not about proving a point or making them regret anything. It is about choosing peace over confusion. It is about choosing honesty over illusion. It is about finally accepting what you have been avoiding for so long. And this acceptance brings a quiet strength that feels different from anything you have felt before. When you stop choosing them, you create space within yourself. Space that was once filled with worry, doubt, and emotional effort. And in that space, you begin to reconnect with parts of yourself that you had forgotten. Your thoughts become clearer. Your emotions begin to settle. You start to feel a sense of relief, even if there is still some pain, because deep down, you know you are no longer going against yourself. You begin to notice small changes. You speak a little more honestly. You listen to your feelings without pushing them away. You make decisions based on what feels right for you, not what keeps someone else comfortable. These may seem like small steps, but they are powerful because they are leading you back to yourself. For a long time, your energy was focused outward, on them, on the relationship, on trying to hold everything together. But now, that energy begins to return to you. And as it does, you start to rebuild something important, your sense of self. You begin to remember what you enjoy, what you need, what you value. You begin to feel like yourself again, not fully at first, but enough to know that you are on the right path. Choosing yourself does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop abandoning your own well-being just to keep someone in your life. It means you understand that love should not require you to lose who you are. It means you respect yourself enough to walk away from what does not support your peace. And in this moment, you realize something deeply important. Coming back to yourself is not about becoming someone new. It is about returning to who you were before you started losing yourself. It is about reconnecting with your truth, your voice, your identity. The moment you stop choosing them is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of a new chapter, one where you are no longer searching for yourself in someone else, one where you stand on your own side again. And from that place, everything begins to change. Slowly, naturally, and in a way that finally feels right. You didn't lose yourself because you were weak. You lost yourself because you kept trying to hold on to something that was slowly pulling you away from who you are. You gave your time, your energy, your patience, your silence, hoping it would turn into something real, something lasting, something that finally felt right. But the truth is, the more you held on, the more you drifted away from yourself. And maybe now you see it clearly. Maybe now you understand why you feel so tired, why your mind feels heavy, why something inside you has been asking for change for so long. It's not because you failed. It's because you stayed too long in a place where you were not growing. You were slowly disappearing. But here is the part that changes everything. Nothing about you is truly lost. Your voice is still there. Your strength is still there. Your clarity is still there. It may feel distant right now, but it never left you. It was just waiting waiting for the moment you finally choose yourself again. And that moment is closer than you think. Not when they change, not when things become perfect, not when you get the answers you were hoping for, but right now, the moment you decide that your peace matters, your truth matters, your life matters. Because the real shift doesn't happen when you find the right person. It happens when you stop losing yourself for the wrong one. And when you finally return to yourself, you won't feel empty. You will feel whole again.